Hi, my name is Angela and I'm from Alpine Physical Therapy, and today I'm going to talk about how pain works. The first thing I want to talk about is how we think pain works. This is centuries old and it really lives in most of us to some degree, even though we know something different now. So most of us think of pain as being an input into our body from our tissues. So for example, if I'm walking and I step on something sharp and I feel pain, we think that the pain comes from the location that we feel it and is an input into our system, up into our nervous system. That actually isn't how pain works in our bodies. Instead, it works more like this. So I'm going to draw poorly a picture of the brain, and this is our spinal cord, and then these are all the nerves that bring information into our system, and it gets that information from our bodies. So this is our body, and this is going to represent all the input. And that input includes things like pressure, temperature, like hot and cold, tension, something's being pulled. It's going to include vision. It's going to include smell. It's going to include chemical changes, like our pH or our oxygen levels in our blood. And you get the picture. There's more. That's not all inclusive. But it takes in lots of information all the time. It does take in something called nociception, which for a long time we all believed was the pain sensor that goes from the tissue into our nervous system, but that is not what it is. Nociception is happening all the time, and it's just your body's way of looking for danger or threats all the time. So it's like a threat detector. So all of this information, and really, actually, going back to nociception, it's looking for changes that might be threatening. Okay, so all of this information is going from the body into the nervous system, into the brain, and we have in our brain what we can call context. So the one thing that none of us can hide from is our own brains. And our own brains, they know everything, right? Like my brain knows everything about me. It knows my social environment. It knows all the nuances of my work environment. It knows my financial status. It knows how well I'm sleeping. It knows, my history. It knows my beliefs. And you get the point. Context is everything that makes up you at any given moment in time, as well as your history and your future, or the things that you think about your future. And so the body takes in all this information, it mixes it up with whatever appropriate context it thinks is appropriate, and it answers a question. And that question is there a threat? And if the answer is no, not right now, you'll just continue on your merry way and your body will continue to function without going into any protective responses. But if the answer is yes, then the body is going to start going into protective responses. And there are a lot of protective responses. And some of them that might be familiar would be like some motor responses. Like when you feel threatened or there's a threat, you might tense up. Most people would have some muscle tension. You might withdraw. Like if you felt a temperature, so temperature is really high, let's say you have context that, high heat to the hand is not safe, you would pull your hand away. That's the motor response. And once you've learned that lesson and you have the history in your context, you probably would pull it away with very little tissue damage. Doesn't mean that it didn't hurt, but it didn't harm your tissue because your body responded how it should. So motor response. It's gonna have like a hormonal response, which we call the endocrine system. Not smelling that very well. It may have an immune response. Usually there's some behavioral responses to threat. Like it might avoid a certain activity again, or I might not cross the road if everything about a scenario, my context and what my body was sensing didn't feel safe. But there's other responses too, but the response that I want to talk about today is pain. So pain is over here. And pain is a protective response to threat. That threat can be perceived threat. That threat can be real. It doesn't matter. Your body's going to respond to protect you if it even thinks there's pain or threat. And I think of pain as being one of our greatest protectors because it's something that we usually don't ignore, and when we do, it can dial up until we listen to it. So it's a great communicator of threat, real or perceived threat. And I think of it as the greatest protector as well, because it's one thing we'll listen to. We'll ignore muscle tension. I'm a PT. People have no idea how much tension they're holding in their bodies a lot of times, but they do know how much pain they have. So a few things that I want to just touch on to end that are truths about pain. Okay. So truths about pain. Pain is a protective response, not an input from our tissue. Pain is communicating about threat, real or perceived. Pain can become overprotective. And there are a lot of factors that contribute to each individual's pain experience. And those factors can be anywhere on this picture. They can be information coming from the body. It can be the context that it happened in. And it can be responses to the responses. Like, for example, it's like once you've experienced significant pain with an activity, often the next time you do it, your body will behave differently and your pain response might be altered because of that change in behavior. So it's complex, but it's interesting to understand it from this perspective, because this is a story of hope, because there's a ton of things that we can address
to reduce pain in a real way. I hope this helps. Happy Pain Awareness Month.